I'm going to read Gracie's guide, How to Deal with Bullying. Crash, bam, boom, heard the kids in the 5th grade classroom. Double crash, double bam, double boom is what Gracie heard. It was the sound her social studies book made when it slipped out of her hand, hit on her desk, fell on top of her pencil box, which popped open and slid onto the floor. It was double loud in Gracie's mind because she was the one who caused this mega noise. Of course, it happened during their silent reading time. The time when everyone else in the classroom is extra quiet as they read a favorite book. Gracie hadn't wanted to read just any book. She wanted to read about the ancient mysteries of the world in the pages of her enormous social studies book. Miss T, her teacher, asked Gracie if everything was okay. She assured her it was. She picked up her things and slid down in her chair. She tried to stay quiet, but before she could say pickled pig's feet 3 times quickly, it was time for lunch. Gracie and Kinsey, her BFF, grabbed their trays with a yummy pepperoni cheese roll, and they sat down together. They ate and talked and talked and ate and tried to keep their mouths closed when full of food. They talked about the next big mystery to solve. Super spies are like that. They're always looking for the next case. When lunch was over, they headed back to class for the big math test. Everyone worked hard for the next hour. It was a tough test. At the end of the day, when everyone was packing up to go home, Gracie sighed a little sigh of relief. This sigh had nothing to do with the math test, even though she knew she didn't do well on it. But it had everything to do with Cooper Hudson. She thought she had made it through the day without him saying mean things to her. Well, that's what she thought, and it was true, until he walked by and dropped his pencil beside her desk. He bent down to pick it up, and he quickly looked Gracie right in the eye and said, "You're so ugly." Gracie froze. She didn't know how to react to him. Usually, she had a mouthful of words to share with anyone willing to listen. But it was different when it came to Cooper. Her heart started beating fast, and she turned her eyes away from him. It wasn't a good feeling. Gracie looked in the mirror when she got home. She didn't really feel ugly, but then she didn't feel pretty either. Her hair was always a little messy, and she had a few freckles, but that's not a big deal. She was probably the skinniest kid in the whole school, which wasn't really a good thing. People had often called her names because she was so skinny, names like Toothpick and Stick. She usually didn't let it bother her, but when someone called her ugly, it hurt. Cooper had called her that almost every day for the last month. He was about to convince her that it was true. Gracie knew something had to be done. She looked in her backpack full of spy supplies and realized there was nothing in there to help her. When it came to mysteries, she was always full of ideas to help solve the case. But this problem was bigger than any mystery she had ever solved. She decided the only way to put a stop to it was to stay home from school. If she stayed home, then she wouldn't have to hear those words every day. This was her plan, and she was going to stick to it. Gracie and her mom lived alone in an apartment building on the edge of town. The building was full of older people, and one of them was her babysitter, Aunt Bee. She wasn't really her aunt, but she felt like family. Gracie stayed with her the next day because she was too sick to go to school. Gracie said her stomach hurt, but when Aunt Bee fixed French toast and bacon, she had to eat. She also ate a grilled cheese for lunch and had 2 cookies as a snack. Mom was a little suspicious that afternoon when she picked her up after work. Even though Gracie wrapped a blanket around her and did her best turtle walk home, Mom said if she wasn't sick, they would have gone to the park. It was an agonizing evening as she stayed wrapped up in her blanket, thinking about the park. The next morning wasn't so easy. Mom didn't believe her. But she had a little plan. She took the electric blanket and she turned it on high. She put the hot blanket on her forehead and she let it stay there until she heard Mom coming down the hall. She quickly put it down and started to cough. She told Mom she thought she had a fever. Gracie was relieved when she had tricked her mom and got to stay home another day. All that day, however, Gracie was worried. She knew she couldn't fool Mom forever, and she felt bad for lying. She had to make another plan. Mom worked the evening shift, so she was home all day. Gracie hopped out of bed and paced the floor whenever she knew Mom was working in the kitchen and wasn't going to pop into her bedroom to check on her. What could she do? How could she stop this? But no matter how many times she walked back and forth, she was still as clueless as the end of the day as she had been that morning. Gracie had to go to school the next day. She sat on the bus and rubbed her stomach because this time she really did feel sick. Cooper was on a roll that day. He whispered, he muttered, he murmured to her all throughout the day. It was like he was making up for the 2 days she was absent. The only thing that made her feel worse was the big fat F written on the top of her math test. She had never failed a test before. She could only imagine how mad Mom was going to be. When Mom looked at her folder that afternoon, she was in shock. She peppered Gracie with questions about the test and missing school. The afternoon ended with a call to Miss T. Gracie sank into the couch and covered her head and began to cry. She didn't want to tell anyone that she was so worried about Cooper she didn't study for the test. It was just too much. Miss T had no answers for Mom because no one knew about Cooper. Gracie hadn't even told Kinsey. The next day was Saturday, and Gracie smiled at the thought of hiding out at Aunt Bee's. But it was somewhere between lunch and an afternoon snack of peanut butter fudge that she let it slip about Cooper. As Aunt Bee was stirring the fudge, Gracie was sitting at the desk in the corner. She looked beside her and she noticed her reflection in the glass door of a little cabinet. She thought to herself, Cooper is right. She had heard the words so many times that she now believed them. She sighed and said, I am ugly, just like Cooper said. Aunt Bee turned quickly. What did you say? Gracie gasped when she realized she had said the words out loud. Nothing, she stammered. Aunt Bee didn't give up. Who is Cooper? Cooper who? Gracie asked. Oh, that's what I want to know. Gracie began to squirm around a bit. She explained that he was just a boy in her class, and she tried to brush it off as nothing, but Aunt Bee was persistent, very persistent. Gracie really didn't want to go into it, but she was tired of holding all that turmoil inside. By the end of the day, 3 things happened. They had eaten fudge by the spoonful because they couldn't wait for it to harden. They sat and sipped iced tea on the balcony while a light rain showered the world around them. And Gracie had told Aunt Bee all about Cooper Hudson. Gracie was happy that afternoon. She felt like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She didn't really understand why she felt different because she knew she would have to see him again on Monday, but for some reason it didn't bother her as badly. Aunt Bee had assured her that Cooper was wrong. She said he's just bullying her, and she had to tell her teacher about it. She said the old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, is not true. And Gracie agreed. The words hurt, probably worse than a black eye. And she decided to talk to her teacher about it on Monday. Gracie was a little afraid to tell Miss T, so she wrote it down and she slipped the note to her early Monday morning. The school counselor, Miss Evans, talked to Gracie about the situation. She told her she was glad she did the first step in doing the right thing by telling a caring adult about it. She said it wasn't Gracie's fault, and she was proud of her for letting Miss T know. Gracie realized she didn't have to hide this any longer. There were people who really cared about her and wanted to help. What a relief. Miss Evans talked with Cooper as well. She told him his words were hurtful to Gracie, and they worked on a plan to change his behavior. Cooper admitted that he had been bullied when he was younger, and it made him feel bad. This is what led him to saying mean things to Gracie. He decided he would never let anyone make him feel that way again. He was going to get the upper hand. He was going to get control of the situation before the situation controlled him. Miss Evans shared with Cooper how that hurting others was never the right answer. She gave him a piece of paper with a picture of a stick person on it, and she told him to crumble the paper up into a little ball. Cooper thought that was kind of cool. He began tossing that paper ball up into the air. He was ready to take aim and throw it into the trash can when she asked him to unfold it and get all the wrinkles out. He tried for 10 minutes to get them out, but realized it was impossible. Miss Evans told him, "That was what happens when you say mean things to other people or call them names. Although you apologize, they're not the same. The scars are still there, just like those wrinkles." When Cooper realized that the words he had said to Gracie had left scars on her, he felt awful. Late Wednesday afternoon, Miss Evans told the class that she had a mystery for them to solve. Gracie sat straight up in her seat and smiled. Did she not realize that there is a super spy in the room? Miss Evans gave everyone 2 things to take home with them that day and asked them to try to figure out how they go together. Everyone left with a ruler and a golden key. When Gracie got home, she used her magnifying glass to carefully examine the objects. She didn't find any clues upon close inspection. She thought and thought and thought until she couldn't think about it anymore. Frustrated, she went to bed with the mystery unsolved. It wasn't until she was eating breakfast the next morning that she remembered a lesson she had learned a long time ago about the golden rule. Gracie slammed her hand on the table and yelled, "Aha!" She scared Mom so badly that she spewed a mouthful of coffee across the kitchen. "Grace and Faith," Mom scolded, "what in the world is wrong? I'm sorry, but I just solved the mystery at school." Gracie happily skipped all the way to the bus stop. She was the first one to raise her hand in class and recite the golden rule for the entire class. Miss Evans was thrilled that Gracie had figured it out. She said the rule is the key to getting along with others. She wrote the rule on the board in big letters. Treat other people the way you want to be treated. There was no mystery in that rule. Simply the truth.